Hello and welcome to The Comic Cave. I'm Ramsey, aka Captain Away, and today we're looking at the 2012 to 2015 series World's Finest, part of DC's The New 52. World's Finest was a staple of DC publishing for decades, with almost every issue featuring the further adventures of Batman and Superman, two heroes too big to contain in their own books. But that series had ended long before the New 52, and with the advent of the Superman-Batman title, there wasn't much need of it. But with the start of the New 52 and DC's desire of having 52 different ongoing titles kick off as part of the event, it's not terribly surprising that they brought it back. But this time, with a twist. Because this time, the apostrophe is in a different spot. Yeah. And that's because instead of starring Batman and Superman, it would star Huntress and Powergirl, the daughter of Batman and cousin of Superman, respectively. In New 52 continuity, both of these characters would actually come from Earth 2, an alternate reality featuring older and kinder heroes that would end up being essentially wiped out by Darkseid as he traveled through the multiverse, laying waste to one version of Earth after another until finally being stopped by the Justice League of the main New 52 continuity, which we're gonna call Earth 0, even though I don't think they ever actually say it in any of these books. Huntress and Powergirl would serve as the last survivors of Earth 2, now trapped on Earth 0. Hence why the title is now intended to refer to worlds in plural. So, worlds is finest. Come on, you had to know that was coming. Longtime DC editor and writer and creator of the original Huntress, Paul Levitz, would pen the adventures for this Earth 2 duo for the entire series, joined by a great many artists, rotating duties throughout the 32-issue run. Though perhaps most notable of them all are two of the earliest, Kevin Maguire and the legend himself, George Perez. This creative team will bring us on a fresh journey with a new version of these characters experiencing a new rebirth on a new world. So let's see how that goes for them and take this away. The comic opens on Helena Bertinelli's life going up in flames. This is a sort of double joke on the character. DC initially introduced the character of the Huntress as Helena Wayne, daughter of the Earth 2 versions of Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle, or Batman and Catwoman as you might know them. As with so many other things, the existence of that character ended with Crisis on Infinite Earths, but the character was popular enough to be recreated in the main DC universe as Helena Bertinelli. That Helena was the daughter of a mob boss and grew up a vengeful and dark vigilante. Bertinelli would remain Huntress straight up to the New 52 with the series Crossbow at the Crossroads, also written by World's finest writer Paul Levitz. That series is not technically part of the New 52, but also is, both serving and not serving as a prequel to this series, with the end of the series leading directly into the start of this one. Helena's Bertinelli identity was compromised during that story, and so she's giving it up here, burning away both the now no longer existing character and the now no longer exactly continuity of that previous series. Confused yet? Cool. In the New 52 continuity, Helena returns to her roots as Helena Wayne, actually starting out as the Robin of Earth 2, and as we'll learn, only adopted the Huntress personality when she came to Earth 0, since that Earth already had Robins. With Helena in this opening scene is Karen Starr, or Kara Zor-el, who was Supergirl on Earth 2. And damn, man, I can't help but note how unimportant this opening scene is versus just how much detail and effort George Perez put into this art. Like seriously, bro, do you sleep? Kara's existence on Earth 2 was hidden from everybody by that world's Superman, who wanted to train her to be a secret weapon for the coming war against Apocalypse, an eventuality spoiled for them by Kaio as we saw in Batman Superman. Go watch that video if you haven't already. When they were pulled into the main universe, Kara overcompensated with her new freedom and became a party animal, while also somehow making herself a billionaire through means never quite explained. But it probably has something to do with all the money they stole from Bruce Wayne as startup funds, something they could do since Helena knew all of his passwords. Bruce didn't need that money anyway. What was he gonna spend it on? Another T-Rex for the Batcave? Actually, give him that money back! Karen and Helena have been on Earth Zero for 5 years at this point, having fallen through some boom tube on Earth 2 while teenagers, and now they're adults, which helps put them more in line with their pre-New 52 counterparts. The duo's fancy Tokyo dinner is interrupted by destruction at a lab Karen just purchased, which she had wanted because it had something called a quantum tunneler, that Karen says would have led them back home. The tunneler in the lab were destroyed by this massive mamma jamma calling himself Hakkou, who actually seems to be feeding on radiation in order to grow stronger. Like, literally eating it. He was gnawing on some fuel rods. He nasty. Huntress points out that Hakkou can even mean radiation in Japanese, although apparently it means fermentation. But I'm no expert. Maybe she's right. Karen, who hasn't been doing the superhero thing up to this point, despite Helena apparently prompting her to get in on the action, reveals that she's finally decided to join the club and even had a special outfit made. It's pretty underwhelming. I get that they wanted to feel less exploitative when they finally updated this character for the first time in like 30 years, but come on. We all know it's all about the boobies in the end. It's her most prominent feature. So if you really hate this outfit, take some solace in the knowledge that it will usually end up getting ripped to shreds for the very short time that it actually lasts. Suited up, the super duo hunts down Hakkou, but find that Powergirl is greatly weakened whenever she comes into contact with him, leaving it up to Huntress to constantly chase him away with her arrows. As they repeatedly fail to stop him, he taunts them with what seems like knowledge of the world they come from, and PG believes he might have even come through the boom tube with them, as she's pretty sure something did, but she can't be certain about either of those things. We never get to learn much about Hakkou though. In their next confrontation, PG bats him out into the bay in an effort to find some way of fighting him without getting weakened. When he surfaces, he starts eating the ships in the water, making his way toward an American naval vessel carrying some nuclear warheads. This gives PG an idea. In previous fights, Hakkou had left after getting full, so now she attempts to overfeed him, shoving the warhead down his gullet, and sure enough, he simply explodes, never to be seen in the series again. Meshiagare! That taken care of, Helena gets back to dealing with having to burn up her old identity, and in order to get the liquid assets necessary to create a new identity, she decides it's time to steal just a little more money from her bat-not dad. But that gets her noticed by Damian Wayne, who shows up to stop her, believing her to have stolen a lot more money from him than she actually has. Helena fights her brother from another dimensional mother until PG intervenes to put a stop to the fight, and everything is explained more or less. So the not-quite siblings instead team up, and together they track down the real thieves to 2 different locations. Powergirl goes to one in the Congo, where she runs across some child soldiers with firepower way above their pay grade. Guns PG believes might have been made on Apocalypse. Helena and Damian follow the other lead to an outpost manned by a wolfman, a creature Helena realizes must have come from Apocalypse itself. At this point, Helena and Damian split up, with Damian promising not to tell his father about Helena, and unfortunately, Damian will be dead before the pair have the chance to interact again. But Huntress will soon have big enough problems of her own to worry about when some assassins attack her at her safe house in New York. These men turn out to be after her because of a bounty put on her by a guy named Ibn Hassan, who we last saw as the villain of that pre-New 52 Huntress series I mentioned earlier. Powergirl quickly gets Hassan to drop the bounty, but while she's doing that, Huntress is sent to Star Island to recover from a bullet wound she received during the assassination attempt. Star Island is the headquarters for Karen's business, Star Industries, and the island and business are more or less run by Karen's personal assistant, a woman named Somya, who appears regularly throughout the series and also is the only other person to know that Karen's star is Powergirl. Helena and Somya will be about the only 2 on the island when it's suddenly attacked by mercenaries, and the injured woman and personal assistant aren't exactly the makeup of the world's strongest defense. So by the time PG makes it back to the island, the mercenaries have escaped with what they came for. and what they came for was technology they claimed Star stole from Holt Industries. Holt Industries is the company run by Michael Holt, aka Mr. Terrific, who had a much less than terrific solo series that I covered a couple years ago. In that series, he was developing a quantum tunneler as well, and at the end of the Mr. Terrific series, Michael discovered that Karen did seem to have stolen something from him just before he took a quantum leap into his tunneler and vanished. Yet it seems he may have returned now, and more than just being behind the attack on Star Island, he may also be the one stealing Bruce Wayne's money, making the Apocalypse guns, and maybe even created Hakkou. Powergirl attempts to confront him in her civilian identity at a gala, only for him to turn into a hideous monster! This is Desaad of Apocalypse, or at least the New 52 version of him, who will be the primary stand-in for Darkseid in this series, and probably the person that actually fell through the boom tube with them to this Earth, if anyone did, like Powergirl thought had happened. Desaad's reveal here was only actually shown to Huntress and Powergirl. Everyone else at the event still saw Desaad as Holt, and so those people saw the heroes fighting back against the evil monster man as an unprovoked attack. Desaad will use this to go after Star Industries, hurting her public image, damaging the company's stock, and attempting to gain control of the company through the courts, which he'll eventually actually succeed at. While PG is distracted by this, Desaad will also launch a full-scale assault on Star Island, destroying the entire complex there and killing everyone inside, including poor Somya. Following this, Powergirl appears in the New 52 Supergirl. Suddenly starting to feel sick, Karen wonders if Kara's appearance has something to do with that, so she decides the two of them may need to get together for a little talk. The primary outcome of which is that Supergirl's home, Sanctuary, believing that Powergirl is the same Kara, provides her with a new suit, same as her old suit. Like, literally. It's just her classic PG look. DC should have really known better than to mess with the boob window. The boob window is everything. PG and Huntress start looking into what's going on with Holt Industries and Desaad, and that gets them attacked by Desaad's pet doggo. A doggo that's the size of a building and about as tough. Powergirl has a surprising amount of difficulty stopping the doggo, and they realize that her powers seem to be draining. Seems that sickness she began feeling in the Supergirl crossover was actually just the start of this power drain. Desaad ups his attack against the duo, sending entire armies after them, and he even manages to capture Helena so he can torture her. Powergirl eventually locates and breaks into his fortress and frees her friend, but Desaad simply sends them off, finding them too below him to worry about at the moment. And there might be good reason for that, because PG is forced to face the fact at this point that her powers really are failing her. She attempts to restore them by taking an expensive flight into space, so she can more directly absorb the rays of the sun. But not only does that fail to solve the problem, now Karen's powers are out of control, to the point that it's putting people near her in danger, like the lawyers attempting to help her get her company back from Holt/Desaad. Unsure of what else to do, Helena decides it's finally time to visit her not dad and seek his help. This leads to the crossover with the original World's Finest duo, currently starring in the New 52 Batman-Superman title that again, I covered a little while back. Hunty ends up caught in a trap in the Batcave while trying to reach her alternate pops, but following a DNA scan and some interaction, and some recovered memories of having visited Earth 2 once, Batman begins to believe Helena's story. So the two start to investigate what's going on with PG's powers, an investigation that leads them to a place called New Gamora, which is led by Kaizen Gamora. While they attempt to infiltrate the country to learn more about what's going on, Superman shows up to help Karen deal with her lack of control, which works up until the point that Karen suddenly seems like she's about to explode, and while she attempts to get away, Superman can't help but try and save her. The resulting explosion seems to cure PG, but now Clark's powers are the ones out of control. Batman had brought along a kryptonite ring to deal with Karen, but instead gives it to Supes to rein in the Man of Steel's powers so that they don't end up hurting anyone. At this point, the two duos swap partners, with Huntress staying behind with Superman to help keep an eye on him, while Batman and Karen head to Gamora to put a stop to whatever evil Kaizen is planning. But there's one small hitch in that plan in the fact that Karen knows the Kaizen. Sort of. On her world, where Superman was keeping her a secret locked away from the rest of the world on a tiny island, she one day managed to sneak out and sneak into a club, where she met a guy named Kin, the Earth 2 version of the Kaizen, and the two immediately hit it off. Not really sure what she possibly could have had to talk about that could have been particularly interesting to him, but maybe I'm giving him too much benefit of the doubt that he was in any way interested in her mind. I mean, you know. Their date would be interrupted by a terrorist attack, and Kin would end up being killed while ironically attempting to save the invincible superhuman he didn't realize he was dating. In the present, at the chance of being reunited with her Kin, Powergirl goes straight to meet with Kaizen, who explains that his people had created nanites that were what had been messing up her powers this whole time, and are now messing up Superman's powers. Those nanites also scanned her body, which is slightly less gross than it sounds, and discovered that Karen was from another Earth. Now with her here, he's able to use her like a focusing device and open a portal to Earth 2. That was surprisingly easy. But he's also used what he's grabbed of her DNA code to create an army of Kryptonian-light clones. The heroes all get together and quickly deal with these creatures, but Kaizen reveals he's also used his nanites to give himself superpowers. Kaizen, Helena, and Karen fight over going through the portal, and eventually the Earth 2 Superman appears in the portal, corrupted and evil, now in control of Darkseid's parademons, and he beckons to Karen to come through. Helena uses an arrow to destroy the portal device before this supposed Superman can convince his maybe cousin. Helena believes that this wasn't truly their world, but Karen says she used her super sight to confirm that really was her actual cousin and thus their original world, despite the fact that Earth 2 Superman seemed to die in the same explosion that sent them to this Earth. But with their home denied to them, all four quickly leave Gamora, and our two title characters refocus their efforts. Karen's lawyers manage to get her company back from Holt, but PG no longer cares, asking them to sell the entire thing, except for one lab where she wants to focus her efforts on building a machine that can take her and Helena back home. The first effort to power up the machine results in blacking out the greater Boston area, forcing Helena into some overtime as she protects the city from looters and one of Karen's own scientists, a young woman named Tanya Spears, who for some unknown reason also has the attention of Desaad. PG helps reboot the local power plant, and they try the machine again. This time it works, creating a portal potentially to Earth 2. But Desaad shows up to the lab this time and attacks, wanting both the portal and Tanya. As the rest of the scientists flee, Powergirl and Huntress arrive to deal with Desaad and some parademons that come through the portal. With that taken care of, the two women jump through the portal themselves to head home, Desaad seemingly hot on their heels before Tanya, as the only tech remaining in the lab, is able to close the gateway. The lab then seems to explode, burying Tanya under piles of rubble. But as rescue workers come to try and dig her out, she simply pushes the heavy equipment off of herself like it's nothing. Out of nowhere, she seems to have grown some intense musculature and skin that is now impervious to needles. As it turns out, PG experimented on her without her permission, which is kinda messed up, Ms. Starr, using a device that the Superman from her world had once created to give someone Kryptonian-like powers. Karen felt the need to do this as a means of repaying a debt to her old assistant, Somya, who it turns out was Tanya's mother. Having done this, Karen is able to return home to her Earth, but leave a Power Girl behind on Earth 0. And as we saw in an earlier video I did, she'll eventually join the Teen Titans. Just in time for that team to break up. Womp womp. Meanwhile, on the other end of the portal, Karen and Helena arrive on Earth 2, where they meet up with a group of super people that was formed on that planet. Desaad has also arrived and begins attacking scientists at the Earth 2 CERN facilities, but that story actually concludes in the Earth 2 comic from the New 52, which I'll cover next. This series instead concludes with 6 more issues that serve as background, telling what it calls the secret history of Superman and Batman, specifically the Superman and Batman of Earth 2. This story is focused on a woman warrior of Darkseid coming to Superman at various stages in his history, trying to bring him to Apokolips to become a servant of Darkseid. This includes her appearing to Jor-El and Lara, Superman's real mom and pop, and attempting to convince them to give her baby Kal-El so she can save him from Krypton's destruction. They refuse, and she tries again many years later when Clark is a child in Smallville. But the Oracle and Themyscira warns Wonder Woman of the threat, and she's able to save young Clark from being taken. Much later in life, after Superman is an adult and married to Lois, while Kara and Helena are still teenagers, the woman will appear again. On this occasion, another capsule from Krypton had just landed, which eventually will be revealed to be a guy named Val-Zod. This capsule will actually be recovered by a billionaire named Terry Sloan. Again, we'll talk about that more when I cover Earth 2. But in attempting to hide the capsule from Superman, Terry actually exposes Supes to kryptonite for the very first time. While weakened from this, the woman shows up again and attempts to simply kidnap Superman, but Batman ends up intervening, using surprise and explosives to get Superman away from her and push her back through the boom tube. Still later, Batman and Wonder Woman will work together to forge that same sample of kryptonite that Sloan had into a sword. When the woman shows up again, the pair will fight her, and while Wonder Woman's regular sword is useless against the woman, the kryptonite sword does surprisingly prove effective against her, and she dies in a fiery explosion. Interestingly enough, this final story also changes the death of the Earth 2 Lois Lane. While earlier stories suggested she was killed by Darkseid's parademons during an invasion, she was instead stabbed to death by a man under the control of Darkseid here. Either way, this isn't the end of their story, but that will be covered in the next video. So for now, it's on to the breakdown. I kinda wish I could say that this was a good comic. And I wish that because I feel it's on the cusp of being a good comic. Honestly, the relationship between Helena and Karen is pretty fun. Both of our main characters are pretty great here. It's like a much more lighthearted take on the Batman-Superman team-up, which is kind of funny considering that these are the characters that come from a war-torn world. Yet this is the series that feels much more optimistic and carefree. Beyond how fun the main characters are though, and some generally good to even occasionally great art from at least most of the artists that stick around for more than a couple issues, there just isn't really much to this comic. The story is kind of limply connected and is constantly feeling like it's building towards things that then never seem to arise before we move on to the next thing. At times, it also feels like Levitz is just kind of phoning it in. That includes having a lot of weird pacing issues, like this here during the crossover with Batman and Superman, where the story just kind of ends awkwardly at this moment. You couldn't have picked a better spot to transition? Whatever. The comic is overall less disjointed than some other New 52 comics, probably thanks to Levitz sticking it out for the entire series, but even then this series just feels extraneous or like filler, and it just doesn't provide us with much to get excited about. So I'm giving this series a recommendation level of medium. There's definitely enough here that I think it could be enjoyed by more than just hardcore fans of these characters, but I feel it could have been so much more than it ended up being. The collected editions get 2 Hakkou faces and 4 new Power Girl logos, which is moving generally from bad to good, but nothing too amazing here. This will break down fairly simple like this. Every volume contains 6 issues, except Volume 2, which has 7, and Volume 4, which has 6 regular issues, but also an annual. Volume 2 and 5 have absolutely no bonus material whatsoever though, so that's why they go on the bottom. Every other volume contains a pretty sizable and honestly pretty nice sketch gallery, with Volume 1 having a bonus cover and Volume 4 including 2 bonus covers. Volume 4 would maybe get a higher ranking than the others for all the content it has, but both Volumes 3 and 4 collect issue 18. And it's really weird to get a random issue collected twice for no apparent reason other than a failure of editorial oversight, so I am docking points on that. Thanks everybody for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And hope you Americans out there have a happy Thanksgiving, and everyone else just, a good week, I guess? As I said, we should be back with Earth 2 next, and then it's time for my annual look at some X-Men comics. What X-Men comics should I cover this year? I'm excited to be getting back to them. If you're excited, or you did enjoy this video, or you're just lost in a world that's not your own and need some guidance, then be sure to click the like, subscribe, comment, and all those things so you can help the channel out, and so you can help yourself to be sure to be here next time, and I hope to see you then, right here, in the Comic Cave.